What's up, guys? Today we're going to talk about a little bit of electrical project that I've got going on. The other issues I need to deal with on this: belts and hoses, new battery, the radiator bracket's broken, it needs to come out, no sort of cracking in the frame, solar controller, and an auxiliary fuse panel to clean up some auxiliary wiring that's kind of jank. I've had this battery now in the truck actually for about 10 years. It has been solid, so I'll talk about the AGM stuff, but it's been getting kind of sketchy lately and it was time to do an update. I'm a huge fan of the AGM batteries. I couldn't replace this battery with exactly what I have, so I bought Odyssey. This is a Deca Intimidator AGM battery I've had in here over 11 years now. Talk about killer battery life. I've been getting weak. Time to replace this guy, clean up a little bit of this wiring here, and we're going to get the solar controller right in this hole. That's about kind of the only place I really can mount it. Keep it close to the battery, and I'll have the pigtails run out of there. As mentioned, this is the 3478 Odyssey Rhenology controller and a new refrigerator pigtail that I built and a little Blue Sea fuse box. All that stuff will go together today on this episode. First things first, I'm gonna go ahead and get this battery torn out of there. She is definitely tight, but she fits. I'm gonna have to redo the battery strap because I'm gonna put that other fuse box on top of the battery as well. So that's what we look like with a new battery and fuse panel installed. And you can see the controller tucked away there. I didn't bore you with just the drilling the holes and stuff like that. Nobody needs instructions with that, but this is pretty straightforward. It's just a 4-wire hookup, hot power and ground to the battery, and then power and ground out to your solar panels. I bought a couple of 100-watt foldable solar panels for this. It's basically just a backup, so my refrigerator doesn't run the battery down, so the stereo doesn't run the battery down. This is a solid state controller, which is using pulse width modulation, and I'm not like a solar expert or anything, but pulse width modulation basically means you're just cycling to get your battery charged up, so it just uses different voltage regulations and the voltage ramp and stuff that this uses. Since I'm not really living out of this, this is kind of like a lower cost unit. I think I paid like about $40 for this off of eBay. This is rated up to 20 amp. The panels are probably likely only going to put out about 10-ish or whatever, even when I gang them. When I get some light, I will actually hook the panels up to this so you can kind of see what's going on with it. Moving on to some other problems. Radiator needed some work. Found a little bit of frame crack around the front of the frame horns here, so I gotta tear the steering box out and get all that stuff out of the way so I can make some weld repair in there. Belts and hoses. See this power steering reservoir hose is just kind of old and crappy, so I'm gonna replace that. Things have moved around so it doesn't fit exactly right. So a shot of the new hydraulic fittings. I got like a 120 there. I just got two 120s. So this tucks back around and ducks in. This is much cleaner and straighter now. So back at it here, with the radiator and everything out of the way, I can get to this frame repair. I don't know if we can see here, but don't mind that bird shit weld. This is all old. Overhead welding sucks and I suck at it. So anyway, this is cracking around this weld. It's cracked just on the edge of the thing here, all the way up on this, and then on the top of the frame too. So I'm gonna have to grind all that out and clean it all up and reinforce it. And the other side isn't quite as bad, but I'm gonna grind all that out and reinforce it again. But to be honest, we made it longer than I anticipated, you know, and no failure, just a crack. So I'm gonna try to fill in that bolt hole and just clean that weld and probably put a little reinforcing bracket up in there as well. And here's a shot of the top of the frame. Crack wraps all the way around right here, runs across the hole and right here. This is an old weld that's just ground out. It's not cracked, but anyway, that's cracked out. I'll have to grind all that out, fill it all back in, get it squared back up. This side's not really stock because I moved this body mount over a little bit to clear where my hydraulic lines come through this hole. Another little side project I'm working on while I've got the truck torn down is some in-cab winch controls. Depending on what your setup is, it may differ. This is just going to be a real simple 3-wire. I'm just using these trailer plugs for my remote and solenoid hookups. Then I've just got some momentary switches to run the front and back. The reason I'm doing this is because I figured I could not control both winches at the same time. What I'm going to do is run these pigtails basically from the switch out to the winch,
and I can either have this plugged in to run it in cab or unplug it and hook the winch remote directly to it to manually run it, just depending on what the situation is. So I'm going to just wire a fuse holder into these and then run the pigtail up into the truck. So here's one of the pigtails that I built. I had inline fuse holder because otherwise it's not protected. This will go to the rear. I've got a flat pigtail to run that up. This just plugs into where my remote would plug in, and then I'm just running it up like this. It runs up behind the battery, and then through the grommet there, and then through the grommet it'll run across the dash, and I'm planning on just putting those switches side by side right here. Okay, and here's the built switch panel. Because of the way these fit, these are back and forth instead of up and down. Both of these pigtails are ran, and I've got them wired to the switch. Just a simple momentary three-way. This is your power in. This is my winching in and winching out. Put my dash pod back together, and I'll show you what that looks like. In-cab controls are all wired up. Let's see if they work. So this is front, closest to me is front. This is rear, it's far away. This way is winching in and winching out. So front winch, out, in, rear winch out, rear winch in. Perfect. When I built the 4Runner, I cut the fenders, but I didn't weld them. I seam sealed them, and that has since failed. So what I'm going to do here is, you can see this fender is destroyed because I crashed it, but you can see the seam sealer on here. I'm going to go ahead and have to pull all that out, and I'm going to do the other side first so I can template that, but it gives you an idea of kind of what I'm up against there. You can see this other side's the same way. See where this is starting to split out, and even though it looks like it's in there, it's starting to let water in. Not a huge job, but sheet metal welding is never that much fun. You can basically see the mess I've got going on right here. These were all cut out, so I'm gonna have to put filler panels in here to kind of clean this up. But to begin with, I'm just gonna start by getting the seam kind of started right here. This is close enough where I don't have to put any filler in there. So I should be able to get it welded down to about here, and then I can kind of like work it all through. I started on this front fender a little bit, and it's just, I don't know, sheet metal's painstaking and annoying. So I'm working with 023 wire here. Lincoln 175 on B3.5 about. Seems to be working okay. I just put. Finally are getting some good weather here. Get to check out the solar stuff. So we'll talk about that a little bit. We did a couple solar panels, a little Rock Pals 100 watt foldables, and then the Renology 20 amp controller. And it seems to be working all right for us. When we first plugged it in, immediately the panels were showing about 8 amps on the controller, and it's been steadily falling off as it charges all day. We're running the refrigerator and the stereo today. It's not pulling a bunch of load, but basically doing what it needs to do, so we won't have a dead battery when we leave this place. So I'll show you that controller here real quick. You can see the voltage showing there is over 13 volts, so that's where the battery's sitting after the solar's been on it all day. We've been on here for several hours now. We can cycle through here, and you can see right now we're putting about 3.5 amps into the battery, and the little indicator lights show that we are charging the way it's supposed to be charging here. I'll link to this little device when we put this video up. Anyway, like I said, this is very basic. I have it plugged into the little Anderson sweater here. Here's the setup that we're using. These are, like I said, they're just the Rock Pal panels, the little foldables. There's your label. These are I think these were originally labeled as the RP82s. They're calling them the RP100 now. They're a 100 watt foldable panel. They come with several different connectors. You can plug them into several different charge generators, solar generator, battery thingamajiggers. And then, like I mentioned, we've been playing with this refrigerator. We didn't have really much to bring out today, but we were running it anyway, and it's not running barely at all. In fact, when I turned it on in the garage, it was like 47 degrees. So it's been pretty solid. The little rack that I built has been solid. It's not really rattling, which is super rad. Slide it all in there like that. It's been pretty spectacular. I really am liking it. Thanks for coming along, watching the adventure. Hopefully you can take something away from this. Please like and subscribe, and peace.